from Team Grad One. And thank you guys for tuning into the second webinar of the day featuring CPA Australia titled Navigating Your Career in Uncertain Times, a Guide to Young Professionals. We have a very well-decorated panel here today in Joseph Ravindran. He's the project lead of Entity Reduction at BHP. Liu Xinyi from the Strategy and Portfolio. She's a Strategy and Portfolio Analyst at Lube Holdings in Berhad, the brand responsible for bringing you Tea Life. And Diana Reza, a manager at the Security Commissions of Malaysia. Before we begin, I'd like to urge everyone to visit CPA's virtual booth here at the Australia Career Fair to discover the different opportunities available. I'd also like to urge everyone to explore the different features in this exclusive career initiative. And don't forget to follow Gradon on social media at Gradon. Oops, there we go. That right there. So I'll now be passing the virtual floor to our moderator of the day, Tyler Chin. All yours, Tyler.
Right, yeah, thank you so much for that, Wafi. And yeah, thanks for Grajan and for CP for putting this talk together and for bringing together this group of panelists to benefit the young professionals and to guide them on their journey during these very, very uncertain times. Right, so first off, I'd like to apologize for the slight delay in the timing because we had some technical difficulties in the background, part of the difficulty of running an online event nowadays, right? So apologies and thank you guys so much for your patience and for still tuning in, and really hope you spend the rest of your time with us as well. So yeah, just to remind you on the topic of the talk for the day, it's not really a talk, it's more of a panel discussion, a casual chat between all of us in the panel. So yeah, it's called Navigating Your Careers in Uncertain Times, a Guide to Young Professionals. All right, so we had a rough introduction for all our speakers so far, but if we move to the next slide, I can introduce our first speaker a little bit more in depth. Oh, sorry, but yes, so our first speaker is Joseph. So Joseph actually graduated with first class honors in accounting and has over 7 years of experience in assurance and corporate advisory. So he actually began his career in assurance. It's kind of the dream, right, to start your career in the Big Four. So he was part of that. He was part of that accounting dream, becoming part of Grant Thornton corporate advisory team, where he was the manager of the business division leader of the corporate recovery and restructuring service line as well. So you recently joined BHP. By the way, congrats, Joseph, on the recent change in your title. BHP Billiton Global Asset Services team to lead their global entity reduction project. Yep. So besides that, Joseph is also a CPA, and I just found out earlier today that Joseph doesn't eat breakfast. So yeah, just a bit of a fun fact for the first speaker of the panel today. And moving on to the next speaker. All right, so you already heard a little bit about Lube Holdings, the brand that's given you Tea Life. And Cindy is part of the team that's now maintaining the fact that Lube can continue supplying you Tea Life, right? So Cindy is actually the commerce graduate from Monash University, and she's recently completed her professional accounting qualifications in CPA, scoring 6 HDs. So if you're an Asian parent, this is someone that you should be jealous about and compare your kid to. Just joking. But by the way, Cindy is one of the few that I think walk a very different path, right? Usually you go for your degree and you go for your professional paper. Cindy went straight in from a degree into professional paper, and now she's out in the working world already, right? So very quickly done her professional papers. Congrats on that, Cindy. Yeah, so a bit about what she's doing for Lube right now. She's actually the strategy and portfolio analyst for Lube Holdings, also the brand that brought you Tea Life, among other brands as well, where she's assisting in identifying and developing the business growth opportunities for her company. And Cindy comes from a background of accounting and finance, and a prior working experience spans across auditing, VC, and consulting as well. Right. So thanks for joining us, Cindy, and for spending your time here with us today. And now, last and definitely not least, we have Diana. So you already know her as the managers of the Securities Commission Malaysia, but what's less known, I guess, that wasn't mentioned earlier, was that she's actually the founder of Nyonya Kain. So this was a startup that she started back in 2018. So she founded Nyonya Kain. It's a social enterprise producing various batik fashion wear and collectibles with a chance for the customers to be empowered to be able to give back to the community. And through Nyonya Kain, she has raised donations, collaborated with larger brands and NGOs as well to give back to the society through various means within the business activities. So not your typical average stereotypical accountant. She's actually gone on to the route of entrepreneurship, started her own brands, and she has that from the talk with Diana earlier as well. She had that knack for entrepreneurship, since she was in school. So back in 2010, she actually did when she was after SPM, she actually did start helping some of her friends' relatives' businesses. So she also had that knack for entrepreneurship, and CPA has kind of given her background, which we'll talk a bit about that later. So yeah, thanks for spending time with us, Diana, and for sharing your diverse experience. And now let's do away with the slides and go straight into talking with each other, right? So how are you guys doing this morning? Have you guys had your breakfast besides Joseph, of course?
No breakfast for me, but otherwise great.
I got nasi kerabu waiting for me after this. So.
Oh, that's an incentive.
Yes.
I guess I have the best of both then. I had breakfast and I have nasi also waiting for me later.
Oh, wow. So that's a 2-in-1. All right, that's great. So yeah, I mean, thanks you guys for spending your time for speaking to the committee in CPA and to the rest of the young graduates as well who are probably wondering how you ended up in your careers. So yeah, and I found it very interesting that three of you are on the same panel because you have such different experience. So I want to dive into that a little bit more and to hear from your own perspective how that has been for you so far as well. So yeah, perhaps we could start with, since we ended with Diana, let's continue from Diana first. So Diana, I actually would like to ask, how you describe your current role in entrepreneurship and also in the STC, and how do you end up doing what you do now?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Tyler, for the introduction as well just now. Thank you so much, CPA Australia as well for having me. All right, so first, I think what was shared earlier kind of explained what I'm doing right now. So in terms of my day job, my corporate job, so I've been in Securities Commission Malaysia actually in my 7th year. So I'm actually serving my scholarship bond with them. So in terms of this, my career has spanned, or it started with market surveillance and then a bit of corporate finance. And overall, my longest tenure was in investor education and unlicensed activities, so basically financial crimes. So, and in terms of like what Tyler was sharing, the other, side hustle or the alter ego of me is basically in entrepreneurship. And my the current startup that I'm in right now is Nyonya Kain. So it started at end of 2018, and it's more of in terms of a vehicle for me it's a social impact enterprise is what I would call it. So we've done a lot of collaborations, we've done a lot of initiatives, partnering up with NGOs and a lot of entities, being able to give back, especially during the pandemic, as we went digital and fully online, that kind of opened up a lot of doors for us. And maybe if I can share in the whole gist of even in SC, why I chose to do investor education and financial crimes was that empathy factor of being able to give back, being able to serve the nation. It could be just something small, for in terms of some people might see it as a small, immeasurable act. But for me, I felt it was very satisfying and it was a very fulfilling in terms of job, because the ability to engage with investors, being able to do that one phone call, or that ability to stop someone from falling victim to scams and all that. So for me, that was very, very something that really put me to be able to sleep very peacefully at night, as well as and to couple it up with Nyonya Kain. So for me, I think at this point in time, that aspect is very, very important to me, being able to give back and how can I contribute to the nation or to the people. I may not be able to change the world, but in order to at least do something right and do something for the community has always been one of my main passion or my main motto in life, basically. Yeah.
All right. Wow. So it's basically viewed from a place of empathy in that sense, right? Like the care for the people, you want to protect them from scams or fraud, and you take that to Nyonya Kain and you want to help the community and give back. So yeah, I admire what you do, and yeah, thanks for doing what you do as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. And before I move on to Cindy, I actually want to remind everyone that's watching right now, this is actually live, nothing's recorded, hence the hiccup earlier. So, this is entirely live and it's not pre-recorded anyway. So if any questions for the panelists, you have them for 1 hour in this room. Any questions at all, drop it in the Q&A, drop it in the chat. And yeah, we'll do our best to answer your questions and put it forward to the panelists for you as well, right? So yeah, now that is out of the way, Cindy, let's move on to you. So I understand that you didn't really walk the conventional path, right? Most people go for, let's say they'll study their degree, they'll start working first, and then they'll maybe consider their professional paper maybe a few years later. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about how you ended up doing what you do right now and how has CPA helped to get you there.
Yep. Thanks for the question, Tyler, and the introduction. So as Tyler mentioned earlier, I graduated from Monash about 2 years back. And right after Monash University, I jumped right into CPA. Actually, right away, it was like less than a month between my CPA and my graduation. So I went straight in, and then my reason for starting then was because I wasn't too sure what I wanted to go into. I did a few internships during my degree and in accounting and audit. And I knew then that I didn't want to continue that path, but I didn't know what I would want to go into instead. So I took the CPA program, and then while also tried out many different roles in many different industries. So that was kind of my journey then. So while doing CPA, I did a few internships in finance, in VC, in consulting, and eventually ended up here in Holding. Because it was during that time when I developed a passion and an interest in consulting, in problem solving, in dealing with problems and finding out solutions. So it was then that I had a pivot. But it was great actually that I took on CPA, because CPA actually it allowed me to do that. It allowed me to switch into from accounting, very technical accounting role, into a more strategic business role. So this will probably be covered later, I'm sure. But CPA allowed me to do that, and that's how I ended up here eventually in Holding in strategy and portfolio, from a very accounting audit driven background then.
Right. Yeah, that's why I thought it was pretty interesting, because usually as a first job, I'll probably see some people, like, because I used to be a recruiter, and what I normally see is like people go into like auditing as a first job because you want to, join the Big Four and all that. So like your first job actually went into strategy, as opposed to something that's within accounting. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you decided to choose strategy from like your experience in consulting and all that, and why did you decide on strategy so far?
Yeah. So when I knew like since uni that I like to work in a place where I know I'll be making a difference. That's a very vague way of saying things. But when I was in accounting back then, my role was very minor. So on a day-to-day basis, I don't see how my work will translate into a tangible impact. So that was something that I wanted to change from my job. That's why I started looking for jobs where I went into smaller firms actually for that reason as well. Because in small companies, you are usually required to wear a lot of hats. They will probably your work is less structured, it's less specialized. It requires you to be more diverse. A lot of firefighting on a day-to-day basis. Like one day you'll be thrown a coding role that you have no background on as well. Like, so it's very unstructured, it's very different definitely when I did that transition. But I found myself to enjoy it because the learning curve is steep, the exposure is very wide. And I started, as I took on more and more like this kind of jobs, I found myself to steer away from where I used to be, like more and more deeper into the startup, SMEs, and also corporate path actually. And I came to enjoy that, and I feel like I can learn a lot more here in this kind of roles, in this kind of companies, and which aligns with what I wanted for my early career. Obviously, what everyone wants for themselves is different. I'm not saying like this is the right path, but I'm sure there are a lot more advantages also to start your career in a big firm, in a very established corporate as well. And I see why people do that. And honestly, for a very long time, I was very inclined on in doing that as well. But for me, I wanted my first job in a way to be very challenging, to really push myself out there, and also to learn a lot more, to learn a lot in my first 3 to 4 years of my career. So that's how I ended up here in a corporate and in a strategy role.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And I think, when it comes to career decisions, it's very personal. Like, like Diana shared earlier as well, it comes from a very personal place, what you want to do, what you're interested in. So yeah, I'm glad you reflected and you managed to find that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing, Cindy. And yeah, now I have to turn to last and if not least, Joseph. So yeah, Joseph, I understand you have got you started in the traditional path, right? You went into auditing with the Big Four. And now I understand you actually shifted away from auditing as a whole, right? You're more towards strategic planning and restructuring for firms. So how do you end up transitioning from auditing to what you do currently?
I think I come from the old school of thought, where I was told to be a true accountant, you need to be an auditor first, right? So yeah, that was I guess one of the reasons. This was say close to 10 years ago, when I was in university, and a lot of lecturers, even your parents, your family members tell you that audit is the way forward. Joining Big Four is a must, things like that, I guess. So I have, a motto. I always listen first to those who tell me, because I suppose they're more experienced and they've gone through life. And after listening once, I will then proceed to make my own decisions. So I tried out audit for about 2 years, I guess, and not to take anything away from it. It was a very enlightening experience. I think as an accountant, it's good to understand the fundamentals, the real bread and butter stuff, I guess. And it gives you a technical understanding of a business, from a financial perspective, not so much on the operational side, but I guess when you perform an audit, there are some aspects where you will need to look into operational fundamentals. And that's where I really found that, I'm more of a people person. I found myself doing a lot of interviews during my audit days. I loved speaking to the client. I loved engaging. And that's what brought me into advisory. My passion, I think I can share, the same sentiment that Sini does. It's to add value, right, to people. And I didn't see that in audit. Some people do. I'm not going to take anything away from that. This is just a personal opinion. And I really saw myself driving and delivering value when I was in advisory, connecting with people. And it was good that I moved out of the Big Four, into Grant Thornton. It was a very boutique advisory structure. And once again, it's not very structured. A lot of things you have to do it from scratch. You have to create templates. You have to create mechanisms, solutions. So a lot of the background work is what you start doing. And I mean, it makes you a good consultant, because you're actually involved in creating the mechanism to make things work. And that is something that I guess I really enjoyed doing. I enjoyed the problems. I enjoyed the struggle. I mean, I did complain. I won't deny, but I really enjoyed that. And I think after 5 to 6 years, I started realizing that I was in the accounting firm environment for too long, and I was starting to look out to see if there were any opportunities elsewhere where I could go into an organization, a commercial structure, corporate structure, and see how I can transfer my skills and see if I can drive value. And that's when the pandemic hit, and I thought I would have to fight my dream for a while. But I guess 1 year down the road, this opportunity with BHP came up. It was something that really fit straight into my palette, and that's why I took it up. It revolves around restructuring. I support restructuring projects, and it does add value in terms of driving the business forward for new initiatives, as well as divesting and demerging and destructuring the older initiatives which are probably not driving or adding any value anymore.
Right. Okay. So very interesting. And I think that kind of is the stereotype, when it comes to when people hear the word accountant, they think it's just a person that does the bookkeeping, the numbers, but it really is problem solving with numbers, if I could sum it up that way, right? It's really trying to find out where the numbers are coming from, understanding the problem in terms of numbers and how you can use numbers to solve it, right? So yeah, that leads to like a whole host of opportunities that, personally myself, not coming from a financial background, it took me a while to really understand what's going on. And yeah, it's such a different world from what I thought it to be, from the outside. So yeah, you mentioned a bit earlier about the pandemic and how that sort of affected that transition as well. So I actually want to take a few minutes to ask the panel here as well, like how has the pandemic sort of shifted your sort of impacted your careers and your choices, your decisions, and what's important to you in your career so far? And since you talked about that, Joseph, since you're on the role for that, maybe you can start with you.
Well, When the pandemic first hit, I guess all of us didn't know what to expect. None of us would have anticipated that it would last this long, right? We just thought it was an infection and, just some infectious disease that was going to go away. So, the first few months of working from home, especially if you work for an organization which is, I would say, boutique, right? I mean, you have the elements in place. You have the virtual technological platforms. We had Zoom, we had Microsoft Teams, to work remotely. But again, it was the first time trying this out, right? And it took a number of months to get used to working remotely, to gain that trust that we're actually working and we're actually delivering, I guess. So the focus was really on that, and the focus was to prove that, to take it as an opportunity, because I mean, apart from doing my job, I was also trying to drive organizational change, to change that mindset that you can actually work from anywhere, you can actually work at any time, flexibly, I guess, because we have all these tools, right? We have all these platforms which actually disrupt our lives. People can reach us at any time. People can, invade our personal space, right? And so I was trying to drive that sort of mindset, to show my team, to show my leadership that it could be done. And I guess the focus was to really show how you can continue to deliver value and continue delivering the end product for your clients, right? Because at that point of time, being in a client-facing industry, clients were, it was anarchy. Basically, they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what to expect. There were a lot of critical deadlines, and so apart from managing things at home, because it was a new setting for the family as well, we had to manage work in a way that we had to keep our bosses happy, we had to keep our teams happy, we had to keep our clients happy, and that was the focus. But at the same time, of course, when everyone was struggling to retain jobs, and I guess, and that is really, really sad, and of course, I think among us as well, I think we would have feared for our jobs as well, because we did not know where this was going. But I did take it as an opportunity to look out, to scour for options, to see what could be done. BHP was not the first interview that I attended. I did attend other interviews as well, but it was not really a fit. And I guess what I really enjoyed when I attended this interview with BHP is, I mean, they embodied a lot of principles that I was driving for, right? That the flexible working, the trust, the no micromanaging, I guess, and embracing the future. This was something that I was really looking for, and this was something that I hope to transition into sooner rather than later. So I guess, yeah, that was basically my story.
Oh wow, that's beautiful, Joseph, man. Like, yeah, and I feel you on that, because most of the times, even when they choose a company to work for, right, assuming you're doing a similar job, the values and the alignment with leadership is something that's really important to look at, especially at your level of seniority as well, when you're managing a team, dealing directly with the top management of the company. It's important that you have that that level of agreement with each other in terms of what's important for the business, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joseph.
Cheers.
So now I want to go back to Diana, because I realize it's been a while since I've summoned you to speak, so to speak. So yeah, first you can share how your work has changed, throughout the pandemic, and how the experience has been for you overall.
Okay, thank you so much, Tyler. With regards to the pandemic, I think in terms of talking about SC, I think things were still business as usual. Of course, it was not easy because, we were not usually on Zoom, or not much of a, it was always mostly physical, and, everything was all on site and all. So I think in terms of that, everybody pivoted very well. So I can say that especially big companies, that was not really an issue. But if I may share on my entrepreneurship angle, for Nyonya Kain, just to share with everyone, just a bit of background. So when I started it, it was just more of really something I would do during my free time, weekends, at night, or even mostly it was just pop-up bazaars. you see. But then when the pandemic hit, so it was exactly 18th of March last year, I think everybody panicked. Everybody literally went kanchong mode because, like, you know, everybody was getting ready for Raya. I actually had my first fashion line ready for Hari Raya, and I didn't know how to sell it because I was not strong online. I was not, you know, my social media was just for the sake of updating people where I'll be, either Publica, you know, Bangsar or Jayawan. So at that point, you know, not really having any experience in, you know, even the basic things like how do I even sell something through Instagram or Facebook, you know, all those basic e-commerce things. Everybody else who were already ahead of the game were kind of like, oh, this is just something we do all the time. So let's just move all our resources towards digital marketing and going everything online, you see. So running Nyonya Kain on my own, it was not easy because, you know, while at night, while, you know, I was either eating or doing laundry, I'm like listening, okay, how do I do digital marketing? How do I learn? So it was just a lot of, I mean, knowledge is always, you know, it's always good to constantly learn and improve your knowledge in all aspects, and definitely, you know, being with the time factor and everything. So it was really interesting to kind of learn all these things on the side, and then at the same time be able to implement it and learn, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and all. So, but at the same time, what I can say is that I feel because for some of us who have already or have already looked at what the CPA offers in terms of what, in, like, for example, most of us who are doing a commerce degree or an accounting degree, you can see that you're already so exposed to so much on, you know, running a business, how to pretty much in terms of, you know, grooming you to be your own CEO, or, you know, it's a starter pack, you know. So for CPA Australia, I felt, you know, having that competitive advantage or having that knowledge really helped, because at the same time, you know, you have aspects on looking at strategy, you know, how to implement things, you know, being an accountant myself, I had no problems running my financial books, you know, I didn't have to go and get an accountant or anything. And because we're just an enterprise, so there was no need for anything further than auditing. But at least I felt it was good. So in terms of, you know, managing your own inventory, everything. So everything from cost accounting, management accounting, everything, I felt that, wow, I'm just so thankful that this is the path I chose. So, but with the pandemic, of course, it was not easy, but I know a lot of people suffered and a lot of businesses also suffered, but I have to admit, it made us all learn a very painful lesson of how the importance of having a really strong backup plan of how to constantly pivot and have alternate ways of running your business. You know, either you're running something that provides services or anything. Everybody, of course, yes, like what Joseph said, at the start, we were all unsure what to do, you know, like every 2 weeks. So it was not very clear. So, but when it came again, you know, somewhere around, I think, second half of last year, I think all of us are like, okay, we know what to do. We know how to stand by, how to prepare our team, how to best, you know, how to say, ride the wave pretty much. So, but for us, as a business, you know, we actually catapulted to nationwide. In fact, even we had some international customers as well because of COVID. If not, I was just only in Klang Valley, you know. So for me, the COVID-19 was pretty much a blessing in disguise, because it made us all learn, it made us all, those of us who could take a really good advantage of it, actually, you know, became better, more resilient people, you know, resilient entrepreneurs, resilient, you know, employees, employers, and all that. So it was very important. And maybe if I can share with everyone who's tuning in, you know, most of you are students. So I understand, you know, with the competitive job market and that's coming up and all that, you know, once I feel that with doing all the aspects that we have learned during our degree, or even later on when you do the CPA Australia and all, you know, sometimes it is also good. I feel I do notice that having some kind of background in either, you know, running a business or something different than a typical route actually gives you such an advantage. Like even for Nyonya Kain, I do a lot of like, we do have apprenticeship programs. So I do get like some of students or some young fresh grads who join, who want to learn a bit more about the business aspect and all. So I tell them, I said, go, you know, whatever you've learned, whatever you've done, you know, update your LinkedIn, because that is the number one thing that people, you know, headhunters and potential employers are looking at when they're looking for people. And then, you know, and right now it's all up to what you represent yourself to be what is on your CV, what's on your resume, and that will then transform into basically getting an interview, and that's when you really sell yourself and basically showcase what you can bring. Because right now, I think later on we will be talking about how it's a very competitive market for graduates. But what I can say is always, just hone your skills to your best advantage, or your passion. Like for me, growing up, especially, I knew I always wanted to do accounting. Even in school, I always felt like, okay, I always wanted to do something in relation to entrepreneurship. So I kind of just slowly crafted, my way of what I can do, what am I going to do to lead me to that path. And then after university, so I did commerce, major in accounting, and then I did take comparing to Singi, I did take a bit of a gap year just to kind of stabilize myself, get acclimatized to the working environment, and then I decided to start the CPA program, and that led me to actually graduate and finish by the end of 2018. And that was exactly the same time Nyonya Kain started off. So, and I felt it was a really, really good advantage and something that was extremely useful, and especially because the skills that you were taught is different, because it's more of like, and then for me, because I know I was going to be more of a generalist, or even at that point I wasn't very my mindset wasn't on, okay, I want to specialize in so and so areas. So it was good to kind of have that diverse option. For me, I'm always have a multiple options kind of person. So that was good. And in terms of especially for entrepreneurs, and I think right now the country is really pushing a lot on having more of, usahawan muda and all that. So that is one aspect as well. And I can also see a lot of people that are also doing their own, side hustle, side business. It's something, for me, it's a stress relief, So right now with tough times coming and all that, it's always good to have something that you're willing to lose sleep for, you're willing to really, you're just so passionate about. So that's my take for the pandemic. Yes. Thank you.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Diana. And I think that's one of the things that I love what you highlighted, like the route of entrepreneurship. Like I was, like I said, I'm not from a financial background, so I had very little knowledge moving in. But, after I sort of spoken to you guys and to a few of my friends as well who have, passed through the CP program and, what it's taught them as a whole. A lot of my entrepreneur friends, actually, those who have like that basis of, like they've taken a CPA program and they understand how to apply it in business. Yeah, like one of the things that we always say in entrepreneurship is, you can only run on passion for so long, but you need a system and you need a structure, right? And at the end of the day, it's the numbers the one that talks in terms of business, right? So I think that's very helpful. And yeah, that's one of the things I realized, like a lot of entrepreneurs actually have a background with CPA or any financial service before. Like, yeah, they actually have that advantage in terms of structuring the business, make sure you can run. And yeah, I think, no doubt that's part of the success of Nyonya Kain as well, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Diana. That's a lot of sharing, and I hope you guys are taking notes. So now, last but if not least, I want to go to Sini. So yeah, just from your perspective, how has your job scope changed, or how's your career focus changed throughout the whole pandemic?
Yeah, so actually compared to Joseph and Diana, I had a very different experience when the pandemic hit. So last March, when the pandemic first hit, I was actually looking for jobs. So I wasn't doing any job. I just finished my first 3 papers of my CPA exams, and I was looking for either jobs or internships, and I was also actively exploring my career options. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do then. I didn't know where I wanted to go, and then the pandemic happened. So for me, it was a very different experience. But I was nodding aggressively when the two of them were speaking, because I can relate with and agree with a lot of things that they shared. For example, Joseph was saying how pandemic can be seen as an opportunity if you know how to make use of it. And also Diana was talking about first technology, talking about pivoting, talking about being entrepreneurial, not just in business, but personally as a character as well. So those are the things that I really agreed with. Just to share a little bit, right? So for me personally, I'm a person who really likes planning. So I like to map out, for example, my entire career path for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, what house I want to buy, and those kind of stuff. So I like to have things really planned out. But the pandemic actually changed all of that for me. All my plans suddenly didn't work anymore. So I was revisiting, revising almost on a daily basis. So what I wanted this week probably cannot happen the next week. So there were a lot of changes for me as a student, exploring her career options and also applying for jobs. So it was a very confusing, very lost and frustrating. And to a lot of people, it's probably very demotivating as well. This may apply for a lot of students here who are looking for jobs. So, but what I eventually came to learn was that there are opportunities if you know how to make use of it. You gotta know how to pivot and you gotta know where to look. And suddenly it's not about looking for the best option and identifying, pinpointing the best option, but it's about making the best out of what you have now, what you know now, and what you can see now. You make the best, make the most out of it. So what if PwC is closed? I cannot apply anymore. What others are out there? What can I do? So really be flexible and also really don't fix yourself in a box, right? And say, oh, I need this and I can only have this, but also see what else are out there. Because if you really look, right, the pandemic actually opened up a lot of opportunities in the sense that a lot of the case study competitions, the jobs that were previously only limited to people in certain geographical area are now open up to people everywhere. So for me, for example, I was based in Pahang at one point, but suddenly I could apply for a lot of jobs and competitions in KL and even in Australia because now it's online. So these are the opportunities that you really need to identify and also focus on instead of looking at what you cannot do now. So that for me was a very big turning point. And also the other thing that I learned was instead of thinking your way out of a problem, I think you should really do something. So for me, action, I guess, is the only truth. So you can think about, oh, should I go into finance? Should I go into auditing? What if I don't like auditing after going into it? Should I start a business? Don't think about it, just do it. And in any way, if you can see, for example, an online lesson on finance for like a 1 hour free lesson or anything, just go and do it and try it. And just do as much as you can since you're in pandemic anyway. There's a lot of things are limited. Just look at what you can do and make the most out of those things. So those are the different things that I did that helped me through my career finding, career exploring period during the pandemic. So I guess if there's anything you can take away from this, my blabbering, like the past 10 minutes is that first be flexible, always look out for opportunities that are available to you, and also being willing to pivot and also being willing to change and know that it's okay to not have a plan. It's okay to not know what's going to happen tomorrow, where you're going to be next year. As long as you make the most out of every step you have now, and then you'll be fine in the future. Yeah, so that's my takeaway.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Cindy. And I think I agree with you. Like a lot of times when it comes to, especially I think fresh graduates, when choosing the first job and everything, it's such a big commitment. I guess it's a big decision, no doubt, right? And like I think a lot of people get caught in like what I call the analysis paralysis, right? Where they just trying to evaluate all the options, they don't know what to do. But that's kind of where I agree with you. Like really, if you're not sure what to do, just try one thing first and figure it out from there as you go along. So yeah, that was brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, Cindy. Right, so I want to be cognizant on the time as well, because I think we have got about 20 minutes left. So I want to open the floor up to the audience to pose questions to the panelists. And if you have any particular question for any particular panelists, in your question, do mention that you want to address it to, let's say, Joseph or Diana or to Cindy as well, yeah? And we'll pose the question to them, okay? So now, I think one of the good questions that was asked was by Muhammad Afnan. And anyone from the panel who would like to take this question up, feel free to just unmute yourself and to speak out. Now, he asked the question, do you think that as a young professional, your career development is more important than your pay? So he gives some context. He said millennials approach their work in a unique way. And you can sort of see why some people choose not to stay with the company for more than 3 years. Some of them might jump ship if they feel like the company doesn't sort of encourage growth or there's no career advancement plans for them as well. So that seems to be one of the main points of consideration. So if any of you would like to take the question, again, the question is, do you think that as a young professional, your career development is more important than your pay?
I think I can I can share some insight on that. I guess, it really depends on your perspective and how you look at it. There are many, I have many friends, many colleagues who look at pay, they switch jobs every 2 years, some even a year, right? Some of them, if you join a fantastic organization which is able to give you both, that's a plus, right? But it doesn't happen for everybody, right? That is something I think we have to accept. But what is important is to keep learning. It's very important to keep learning because knowledge is very dynamic, especially in current times. It changes every few years, right? We can look at how digital transformation has been happening, and how the pandemic has really made waves in terms of virtual meetings, like what we're having now, right? And as I think Diana mentioned, in her organization it was all physical. I think I can say for mine too, it was, except unless you have international clients, then you have no choice but use Skype or, but when you have a choice, it's always a physical meeting with your Kwemwe and Tetare, and it's our culture, right? It is our culture. So I guess with this shift and with the dynamism that exists in the current market, it's good to have a very developed mind. I mean, you come as a raw diamond out of university, and you need to be polished. That is very important. So I would say, a good model to follow would be, at least for the first 3 years. For the first 3 years, don't think too much about the money. Think about how much you can learn. Think about your intellectual growth. Think about your technical growth. A lot of us come out of school maybe not being good orators, right? Maybe we're not able to speak too well or write too well. I think these are soft skills that are really important, especially today, where you don't get a chance to make a first impression physically. You have to do it virtually, right? So in this scenario, it's good to be able to articulate things well, I guess. So these are things that a lot of people maybe don't think about until a later stage of their career. They don't work on their English, they don't work on these things where they think it's not important. But we're dealing with an international market. Today, all our technological platforms give us a better reach, right? So first 3 years, think about yourself. Think about investing in yourself. Apart from what you learn on the job, like what Sini pointed out, go on at night, pick out a program, if it's free or even if you have to pay a bit of money, just pick it up, right? Learn, unlearn, relearn. And once you've reached, your 3rd year, or if you can wait a bit longer, maybe your 5th year, when you have equipped yourself, go out to the market and test your value. You'll be surprised at how fast you get your ROI. It's just 5 years. In some cases, 3, right? So I guess that would be, a good model to follow. It's not a must. It works differently for all of us. All of us have different circumstances, right? So, tailor it according to what works for you. This is just a guide.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joseph. And yeah, I kind of agree, right? Because usually your salary will correspond with how many problems you can solve for the company, how complex the problems are that you can solve, and how many people can lead. That kind of metrics how much you eventually earn. So it's a chicken and egg game, of course, but if you have the skills, chances are you go to somewhere and they see the value, then they pay accordingly as well, right? So yeah, hope that answers your question, Afnan. Right. So I'm aware there's a lot of questions coming in. So I want to, if I could just mention all the panelists, I will try to keep replies to about maybe within 5 minutes so I can get to more questions and we can answer more questions from the audience. All right. Right. So we actually have a question from Laura here. So Laura asks, my question is, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in a role that is different to their degree? Now she gives a bit more context here. I assume that most employees would be, more prone to hiring someone or giving someone an interview opportunity if they have a related knowledge or related study within a certain field. So again, the question is, what advice will you give to someone who is interested in a role that is different from what they've studied? Yeah, so open to anyone who would like to pick up the question.
If I may, Tyler, yeah. Okay, so what I've seen in both ST as well as in the entrepreneurship background, you can see so many people who, let's say, for example, even just in in basics of business, or even when in ST, you have engineers, also doing case reviews or corporate finance, and you have people, for example, who did TESOL, who are also keen to be involved in economics, and and also I recently had a colleague who was majoring in psychology, but then he took up an interest in doing things with relations to capital market regulations and all. So it's very diverse, and even in business, you'll be surprised when you listen or you Google up and look at some of the best entrepreneurs or the founders. You can see that, let's say, for example, they're selling, let's say, burger, or even they're doing any kind of food and beverage, or any kind of services, and you can see their background is totally different. Like someone whose passion to bake, but actually had a degree in chemistry, for example, or a degree in econometrics or something. So what I can advise is, potentially, if let's say you did something totally different from what you are entering, or that role that you're interested in, or a role you were offered, you might, in other words, comparing to, let's say, for example, you have got an offer that leads in something towards engineering, but you did accounting. So comparing to other engineering graduates, you're just a little bit behind, but that doesn't mean you are disadvantaged. It just means that you need to spend a little bit more time to do more research, to understand and keep up. And also I feel that is a very good opportunity, because you are challenging yourself to beyond your own potential. And I think that is very good, because not only does it look very good overall when later on, you've excelled in that role, or you've garnered enough experience, like what, Joseph was sharing, in terms of how, in terms of like all the skills you have earned and everything in your respective roles, that would be something very, very beneficial. And in terms of research, research, like how I was sharing, there's nothing wrong with gaining more knowledge. Nobody said learning was a waste of time. No, even if you're retired or anytime, even if you're on your break, it's always good to always continue learning, even if it's just a skill. Like, for example, learning a new anything during the pandemic, learning how to knit, learning how to crochet, learning everything. So when it comes to your career, of course, it is more beneficial if you are learning something that applies towards your career. Like recently, in terms of within SC, I had a role that was also more garnering towards also trying to do a lot of capital market promotions or financial markets promotions, how to kind of make people more aware, how do we reach the masses? You see, so at the same time, I felt this was killing two birds with one stone for me, because I'm also learning how to also grow my business, you see. So I felt it was a really good opportunity. And if you get that kind of example or that kind of opportunity, then good on you. But other than that, don't be afraid. In fact, it's always good to challenge yourself, because sometimes in that whole course, you find yourself and you realize, what if suddenly, I did accounting, but I find that I have passion for data analytics and engineering areas. I prefer, or even you want to go into biotech or something. Because to be very honest, I think looking at how I have had 7 years of experience in my career, and looking at how I fared and other people have fared as well. Your degree, yes, it gets you that qualification. And then, of course, if you go on to a professional qualification, of course, you are more marketable. You do have a lot more experience to play around with. You do have a lot that you have learned that you can contribute to your future employers. But at the same time, in terms of that, will get you your first job. And then after that, your first job will speak for everything else, So like if some of us, I think like what the first question was asking about, do you want to jump jobs? Do you want to, getting more experience within your CV or your resume? Then yes, because that's how I felt the current market, or more, how to say, majority of most the employers are. So when you graduate, what do you have to show? So of course your degree speaks for itself. So, for those who are obviously first class or second class upper, and with all the credentials that you have, that will make you more marketable, of course. So, but also like maybe if I can share what Joseph was saying in terms of how to be good orators and all that. It also depends on the interview. They won't just hire you looking at your papers. And then when they realize, oh, this person can't talk, this person can't articulate, this person can't represent or can't really share what she needs to share or what she is working on. So it's just a very interesting and how to say fulfilling journey as well. So, but nonetheless, especially if coming back to the question, research and learn and continue, like investing in yourself, like what Joseph said, that's the best investment. Because if anything happens to you, in the end, it is you that it is your life, it is your career. In the end, you are only satisfying and pleasing yourself. You do not live to satisfy or please other people around the world, maybe your family, friends, or your other colleagues and all that. So in the end, do what makes you happy. I really believe in that. I mean, some people say that, oh, do what you love what you do is something we just kind of live by, but we don't practice. But I feel it's really true because I think nowadays you can't just do something for the sake of it's paying my bills. You need something that actually gives you that drive, gives you that passion to live, and at the same time you're benefiting it in every aspect possible. Yeah. Thank you.
Right, yeah, that was very generous in sharing. Thanks a lot, Diana. And I think, yeah, what you mentioned was true, like if you know it to be true, then, it's just a little bit more legwork and acknowledging that you are a little bit further than some people have studied in that field. Then you can sort of, make that run to try and catch up to them and to overtake them eventually as well, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. But I'm also curious to get Cindy's perspective on this. Because I imagine, like you literally like went through this quite recently, right? So do you want to share about how you see this as well?
Yes, actually, like a lot of people worry about their degree and they think, oh, I'm in accounting, I can do engineering stuff, but that's not it. I think when interviewers or when managers are hiring, right, they look way beyond your education, for example. So they look at your whole, it's a whole package, right? So what can you offer in terms of soft skills? What are your character? And these are actually from what I see, more important than your degree, especially for fresh grads, for people looking for your first job. Because not to say anything about your degree, but as fresh grads, there's not a lot of technical skills we can offer. Just in honesty, if they want someone with very specialized skills, they wouldn't be looking for fresh grads. So when they're hiring us, they actually care more about your character. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to do the job, if you're humble, if you're independent, if you're resourceful, those are the kind of things that help you stand out, right? It doesn't matter how familiar you are with your IFRS or your accounting standards. It's all about your soft skills. So if you have that soft skills, if your foundation and if your character is strong enough, this character is transmissible, I would say, into any industry you want to venture in. So if let's say I'm someone who's very passionate in, for example, engineering, and if I go into the firm, if I can show them even though without that degree, I can do the job because I am willing to put in that extra hour to make sure I am capable of doing that engineering job. And if you can convince the hirer, I think you'll be fine. And if you do get in, I think you actually be even more valuable than other engineers because you have a different mindset, right? You have an accounting mindset. You look at things differently from how engineers think. So that actually can be a competitive advantage to you, provided that you're willing to put in that extra work, you're willing to put in that extra hours in order to make up for the years of education that you don't have, right? So I think definitely don't be constrained by your degree, your education. If you're very interested or very passionate and very dedicated to a field that is completely different from your education, feel free to go for it. And don't think that what you learn is wasted. It's definitely not. I think whatever you learn, that's yours. If you learn something, it's not a waste of time. You will definitely find an application anyhow, right? For example, I did art back in primary school. So I learned art for quite a number of years, right? And you can say, oh, why are you learning how to draw? That's so useless. And I'm an accountant now, I'm in strategy. And I still find like application here and there from what I learned back in standard one. I learned about color theory and which applies to my slide making. So like this kind of skills and this kind of application that you never expected will definitely show up throughout your career, throughout your life. So yeah, I think whatever you learn is yours, and if you feel like you need to learn something else, go for it and commit to it, and you definitely get what you want.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Cindy. And yeah, actually, there's more questions. I think we probably have time for one more question. But before I get to that, I'm just going to very quickly share all the panelists' LinkedIn profiles over here so you guys can reach out and connect to them. Yeah, and I do encourage it because I realize some of you have got very specific questions for them that we might not be able to cover during the session. So yeah, please do. I encourage you to reach out to them. Any questions you have further, to connect with them on LinkedIn and to follow them and to, of course, post your questions and continue the conversation there as well, right? Yeah, so I just shared that in the chat section here. Feel free to look in and to click in as well, right? Now, I think we've got time for one more question. Literally 5 more minutes before I hand the time back to Wafi. There's actually a question from Charmaine here, which I think would be quite good for all the audiences that are watching. And the question is this: what do you do in times of intense confusion about your own career? Yeah, so I think this is a little bit of a philosophical question, right? When it comes to when you see doubting, what you're doing, or you're confused about what to do next, or you're feeling stuck, you're not sure what to do. So what's one, if you could give like a quote or one-liner advice, ideally from all three of you, what would that be for someone who's feeling intense confusion about their own careers?
If I may, I think that relates to me. It feels almost like targeted to me. So in terms of intense confusion, I think it's very important that you don't spiral down, which is very likely to happen. So talk to people, take a break, and know that it is okay as long as the fact that you're worried about your intense confusion shows that you care about your career, and that quality itself will guarantee that you will get through it. So that's a very short, very, very short answer to a very, very long solution that I have.
Right, yeah, thanks for that. Diana, Joseph, do you want to hop in?
Sure, go ahead. Diana. Go ahead.
Okay. For me, I think in terms of, it is definitely, I feel the era now, right, with information overload. I think now, way long time ago, there was no such thing as social media, which, and it was easier to control things. And now there's just information everywhere, when you happen, for example, you happen to be Googling like, what's the best career for myself, or what, doing personality tests, and suddenly your Facebook and Instagram is just loaded with everything. And next thing you know, do I really know what I want now? Is this really the right path for me? So, but sometimes I feel in the end, talking to advisors, talking to, the mentors, or talking to people who know you, your peers, or anybody you have actually, interned with, or even your own family members who can give you critical criticism and advice in terms of what they think would be the best for you, then yes. But at the same time, I think like what Joseph said earlier in this talk, yes, you listen to everything, but in the end, you need to sit down, quiet your mind, and think what you feel like doing. Because at the same time, I really believe in that fact where, belum cuba belum tahu. So if something you feel that, I think I can do this, but no harm in trying. At least okay, that was not for me, so always it's good to always strategize, act, and then always postmortem, trying to see what went wrong, what you prefer or what you love doing. In the end, that will be something that can kind of give you a bit more of clarity, and I feel it's always normal. I mean, I also, to be honest, like on and off, I struggle with like anxiety and also a lot of things, it's very overwhelming nowadays, especially with the pandemic, like pressure coming in from everywhere. So like what Cindy was saying is so important. Like you need to take care of yourself. It is okay not to be okay, and it's okay to always take breaks, because sometimes you need to take a step back to kind of catapult yourself further. Just like a bow and arrow. So it's always good to analyze that, and because sometimes the worst thing that could happen is when you burn out, and when things get bad, and it takes a while to recover. So it's always good to see, okay, I think now with the pandemic, some people may not experience it, like work-life balance as good. But some people, I think you can see, I think the research is saying that a lot of employees prefer having a hybrid working system, because you get to spend more time on yourself. I have more time to go for exercises, I have more time to spend with friends, and it's a bit more fluid when it comes to in terms of managing your time and all that. So but I feel it's always just managing what comes to you, and I feel social media and whatever information that you're exposed to is always something. It's a challenge to manage, and challenge to just say, okay.
Sorry, Diana. Sorry, I'm gonna have to cut you off here because we're quite short on time. So perhaps you can just go with one line that you want to leave the people with.
Take care of yourself. I mean, basically what Cindy said, and in terms of take care of yourself, and then in terms of just manage all the information that has been rushed towards you. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, but thanks for being so generous.
No worries,
guys,
sorry.
please connect with her if you have any more questions. She has a lot of insights to share, so please connect with her and ask her all the questions you have.
Please do.
But Joseph, do you have any last words you want to leave for people who are feeling confused in their career?
I had a similar situation a number of years back. After my CPA, I pursued the Certified Fraud Examiner's qualification, right? Because that was something that I was really interested in. But once I was done with that, my firm chose to make me the leader for restructuring instead of forensics, right? I was quite disappointed. I did a lot of hard work. I pursued the qualification, but it goes on. It's knowledge. It's knowledge that is good to have, right? So you keep going. I recently enrolled for the CPA Australia Digital Finance micro credentials as well, to keep myself on track with the digital transformation that's happening. So I guess these are things that we can do. Just continue to learn. Learning can be a very calming mechanism. The fact that you have that knowledge, that it's not going to go to waste, right? So guys, I guess just to leave you with this, do the CPA program. Your life will be safe and set.
Right, yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Joseph. And everyone's curious about what the course is all about. Yeah, you can reach out to Joseph and ask him, what his considerations are and how he made the decision, so on and so forth. But I just want to direct your attention to the chat really quickly. I just dropped a link for basically a feedback form attendance for you guys as well. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, and please do click on it and to give us your feedback as well. And of course, there's a QR code here for those of you who have a camera. And if you'd like to just scan that and give us your feedback and to fill that in as well, we'll really appreciate that, okay? And now I want to pass the time back on to Wafi. So Wafi, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you very much, Tyler. Thank you, Joseph, Sini, and Diana for all the insights and the tips that you have given to our audience today. So before you guys leave, do visit CPA Australia's booth here at the Australia Career Fair to discover and explore the different career opportunities that they offer. And don't forget to vote for CPA as Malaysia's most preferred employer at the Gradon Brand Awards. So thank you once again to Tyler, Joseph, and Sini and Diana for sharing your insights today. And yep, that's it